Well, as Canada's policies seem to be getting more anti-Israel by the hour, they have also dealt with a sharp rise in anti-Semitism and ongoing anti-Semitic pro-terror protests. Now, here to speak with us about the Canadian government's change in approach is former Israeli ambassador to Canada, Alan Baker. Ambassador Baker, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start by getting your take on the statements of the foreign minister, Melanie Joly, about halting arms sales to Israel. Is this actually a policy that Canada intends to go through with?
Well, as you said earlier, there aren't really any arms sales to the best of my knowledge. There are perhaps equipment or parts of military vehicles and things like that, but I don't think there are any serious arms sales that if stopped, will harm Israel's capabilities of carrying out this war. So I think it's more a symbolic move, trying to sort of jump onto the bandwagon of what's happening in Europe, and perhaps also in the United States.
Now, there was also a non-binding resolution passed proposed by the NDP party demanding a ceasefire. Why is the Canadian Parliament being used to advance these, although non-binding, highly divisive and politicized Palestinian narratives?
Well, look, it's a mixture of internal Canadian politics and a lot of public pressure. The NDP party, the New Democratic Party, was quite interesting. It was established in the 1950s by Jewish intellectuals, and it's now absolutely done a volte-face and become a major influence with the hostility towards Israel. Also, the Canadian Liberal Party. It's always been a very friendly party. Most of Canada's Jewish community, in fact, support and even finance the Liberal Party. So it's quite sad for me as a former ambassador who's very much involved and in contact with the members of Parliament to see this sad development. Let me just say another thing. The former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, from the Conservative Party, he visited Israel about 10 years ago, and he said in the Israeli Knesset, in the parliament, Israel, Canada has your back. We're behind you in every way possible. So this change now is very sad and worrying.
Now, at one point, Canada did freeze funding to UNRWA, and now they're stating they will restore the funding despite no action being taken to remedy the problem within UNRWA. What is your take on this?
Well, I welcome the fact that the Canadians announced that they were suspending payments to UNRWA when it became clear that UNRWA staff members have been involved in carrying out those acts of terror that were committed on the 7th of October, but also throughout the period of UNRWA's existence since 1948. The whole aim has been to prolong the refugee status of Palestinian residents of Gaza and not advance any possibility of peace. So that the whole purpose of UNRWA is questionable, and therefore it's quite puzzling why the Canadians have been one of the major funders of UNRWA, and now why they're coming back to fund UNRWA, knowing that this agency has got very unclean hands.
Absolutely. What is motivating this increasingly anti-Israel position of Trudeau and his government?
Look, I think the Canadians traditionally copy what the Europeans do. Whilst Canada is a huge country and very solid from the economic point of view, it doesn't consider itself to be confident enough to maintain its own independent policies. It's got the United States next to it, which is quite frightening. And so it tends to follow Europe, and what the French do and the Europeans do. Ultimately, the Canadians will copy this. Again, during the former Conservative administration, this didn't happen, and the Conservatives, they had a very independent policy, and they were very supportive of Israel. Why is this happening now? There are huge pressures on Prime Minister Trudeau. He can't stand by and oppose these pressures. There's a huge amount of immigration from Muslim countries, and the internal Canadian politics is such that he has to placate those elements that are trying to push towards a more anti-Israel agenda, which is
Ambassador
again,
Baker, Ambassador Baker, I'm very sorry to cut you off, but we are actually out of time. I really appreciate you taking the time to share some insights about this unfortunate situation in Canada. Let's hope that they change course in the direction that they're going. But thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.